Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our webinar on isolation. This is the second webinar we're doing on this topic. The first was many months ago when we were in a relative calm period vis-a-vis COVID. Of course, we're not in that place now, and we decided to revisit isolation and talk to our esteemed panelists on where we are today and what progress we've made. I'd like to welcome our guest panelists today, Bruce Hengis from Spellman Brady in St. Louis, and our Ageless Living collaborators, Rachel Rangelove, Dale Miller, Laura Busalaki, Faith Mirabella, and I'm Phoebe Stein of Olive Presents. We're going to start off with a few housekeeping items. I know that's unusual, but because the subject is so intense, especially now, we've allocated an hour and a half for the webinar. So those of you who can't stay with us, I'm sorry. Those who do, I hope it's meaningful. So last thing I want to say is David Ashen, who is my co-founder of Ageless Living Collaborative, is running the back end of today's webinar, and he often does that for us when he's not on the panel. So a big thank you, David, to making this come to life every time we do a webinar. We're going to start off with asking, I think, the question that everybody has. What are your primary concerns about this lingering pandemic? I know we all have concerns of different types, but with regard to isolation, Rachel, can you take us into that?
Sure. I mean, there are so many things to be concerned about in senior living, and of course for all of us who are living through this. And I think what all of us who are in this industry know is that our properties are a lot more than properties. They're communities, and those communities are made up of residents. They're made up of associates that work there and care for the residents, and they're made up of family members. And all of those parties are very important to the successful operation of senior living. So while our first responsibility is obviously always to the safety and well-being of our residents, we also have to concern ourselves with our associates and our family members. And so we have had prolonged times where we've asked associates to work overtime. They've been creative, they've gone out of their way, they've trained residents on technology. They face situations at home that are very difficult for them to overcome. They've lost residents that they love and care about. And so these are things that are very concerning to us as we think about our properties and taking care of the people who take care of our seniors and making sure that they are emotionally supported as well. And then we get to family members. I mean, the family members who in many cases can't see their loved ones, they're going through financial distress. We care about this because all of these things feed into the way that our residents feel and our ability to take care of them in the best manner that we can. Phoebe, you're on mute. I don't know how Phoebe got muted.
I know Phoebe's muted. There she is.
Isn't that hilarious? I don't even know.
Let's just get the technical difficulty out of the way early on.
I think somebody was playing with me. Since pandemic started, because of all those new concerns that maybe hadn't had to be dealt with previously within communities, both with families and residents as well as caretakers, is there now a protocol in place and maybe a mental health support system for those entities?
Yeah, there are a lot of caregivers, and I'm sure Laura can speak to this, a lot of operators who have really gone and done some out of the box thinking about how they can support their caregivers through meals being sent home to help so that they don't have to cook, people who are very flexible. Some of our operators hired through more of a universal caregiver model to encourage more people to come and work in the property rather than hiring specific roles that may be more difficult to fill. I think associate appreciation is also something that our operators have done relatively well. And the best operators communicate frequently with family members. So they do it via Facebook, they do it via Instagram, they do it on LinkedIn, they do it on their website. And I think, you know, that sense of communication on an ongoing basis can help families overcome some of the stress that they're feeling as far as being separated from loved ones, and also will help us if we identify any issues that will affect our residents as well.
Laura, would you like to share some of the things your communities are doing
Sure.
on that?
I mean, sure. A lot of the stuff that Rachel's talking about, you know, the Brookdale communities are doing too. We are looking at doing like self-help, being able to identify and recognize when you're stressed out, what you can do to de-stress, making sure that you're taking care of yourself, because the caregivers, they are 100% caring for everybody but themselves. So emphasizing the need to pay attention to how you are feeling and being able to step back and step away when need be to take care of yourself has been very frequently communicated.
We certainly see that here, and I know we see it via the news across the country with people banging pots and pans and signs on senior living communities, whether it's independent living or assisted living, you know, big thank you signs. And it just makes us feel good, I think, that there is that showing, that outward showing of appreciation. I don't think I remember another time that I've seen that before, but it's a good thing. Dale, has isolation due to COVID caused other health issues in seniors?
Very definitely.
Would you like to share some of those issues?
Yes, I would.
Thank you.
People are concerned about leaving their homes, especially seniors. And their concerns include going to the dentist or the doctor because they're so isolated and so fearful of what might happen to them. And so they're ignoring any health issues that might come up and thinking that, well, it may go away, but it doesn't always go away. And there are several studies that have been done recently about isolation and the onset of diabetes, simply because people are not paying attention to their diets and their health. And so that's another example of how people are ignoring their health. Also, there have been instances where people have had strokes or heart attacks and they were afraid to call for help because they were so fearful of going to the hospital and potentially getting infected with COVID. And so that's another example. And it's really concerning because we all know that our aging population are more susceptible to illness. And so we need to do things to enable them to take good care of their health and for families to be sure that that's happening.
So how do we do that in the community? I know that in Chicago, we see a number of television ads from cardiologists and from dentists and basically every specialty, not to ignore a symptom. Please come to the ER, make an appointment with your doctor. And they're pleading that case because so many seniors have neglected themselves. But how do we facilitate that transition of, I have a problem, I don't have COVID, I need to see my specialist? How do we make that happen? Laura, do you have some ideas?
I think we have to just keep encouraging. You want them to be safe, and the hospitals, the clinics, they're doing everything they can to keep the environments clean and safe for not just seniors, but for ourselves. So I think encouraging, whether it's the loved one, family member, or if it's within the community, to encourage them to go. I know there's a lot of concerns now with the spikes in cases, not wanting to use up resources
Mhm.
to take over beds.
Right.
I mean, even within my own family, not my immediate family, but my family at large, that's a big concern.
Well, I know I spoke to Bruce about this as well, and his family is adopting a technology. Bruce, would you share how that's working and what it is and how that's facilitated positive outcomes?
Yeah, I'll tell you, like so many of us, the isolation is very personal. And I hit it from a couple of different angles. Number one, my mother was in a memory care unit and she had really a clean bill of health other than the memory issues. But the isolation really was confusing to her and she passed in April. And it was really from a cardiac arrest situation that came very suddenly, but it was really driven through the isolation. And quite honestly, with our family, we had to find a better way. I've got 83-year-old in-laws up in Iowa, 6 hours away, and a visually disabled sister-in-law. And we utilized Amazon Alexa, the Echo Show feature is what you see on the screen. And basically, this was an ability to put our eyes on our loved ones, and we could check in and really take a look at how they're doing, if they're looking feverish, how they're, if they've showered that day, kind of what they're up to. It has a neat drop-in feature that if they're not answering, we could just drop in and see what's happening in the space. But we've actually utilized it on a regular basis for dining, 6 o'clock every night for dining together, that we can call my mother and father-in-law and sister-in-law, and we have dinner together. And we can see each other. And it's like we're sitting around the table together. So we're sharing a meal using technology. It's not sitting across the table, but it's the next best thing.
That's fantastic. Are you guys going to use this for Thanksgiving too?
Yeah, we'll use it for Thanksgiving, and it's become kind of a habit. And the nice thing is it's all audio. And with my with my sister-in-law, we can turn on her lights because she doesn't turn on her lights. We need to turn on her lights so we can see what's going on through visual cues, and we can check out, see what, help her get dressed, help her with medicine, taking her medicine, help her with, making sure she's got the right soup can when she's making lunch, and help her out in the kitchen just by the visual aids. So it's been a great technology for us in putting reminders for doctor's appointments and just setting up little things. So it's been, it's just a way that we connected better. So that's
great.
That's
great. Faith, what have your senior communities done to stem the loneliness and the isolation? Not just the doctor appointment, but the everyday to stem that loneliness.
They've done a lot of things. I think a lot of communities had started off, let's get a list of the residents, just call, start from A, go to Z, and keep doing that and checking in and making sure. And as we knew more about COVID, as we knew about the rules, checking in, and those 5-minute check-ins turned into 20, 30 minutes, because then that was the human connection, so that whoever were, in the community, whether it was activities director or the ED themselves checking in with people, that was a really great way just to get that initial base that there was somebody there that could listen and understand. Some of the other activities it did once they sort of got a baseline of getting everybody food, how do you work the meals and how do you do things. They one of the communities we has a annual celebration, and they didn't want to give up on that, so they took a cocktail cart and a raw bar cart and went to each apartment, and it went over huge because it was a creative way to keep normalcy. It was good, another way to then have that contact or be part of a larger thing, of an event. And that community was great because at the very beginning they set the ground rules: wear a mask, stay away. They kept certain things open in their commons. And they told the residents, these are the rules. And if you break them, then this is gone. Like, this is on you. And you know the consequences beyond just us doing a finger wag, So they did, where they would call for appointments at the fitness room. And they would still have some live on Zoom, so people, could get various people, but they still wanted to get them out of the room, especially those that are, single, so they could be at the coffee clutch and have that, have that time and socially distance. What didn't work was it had community where they really locked down, and I think they locked down a lot longer, a lot quicker. We're in Massachusetts, so we were one of the first ones that, the wave hit and everything, we just closed everything down. So it was out of abundance of caution and care and love that they did this, but the residents really suffered. And a couple months later, when I asked them, how is it, because the commons were gone. I mean, there was furniture even taken out of the commons so that they, didn't, weren't encouraged to gather. And they were
Somewhat like Starbucks.
yeah, exactly. They said, oh, it's really hit us bad. And I said, is it the isolation that has? She says, yeah. So she knew it was mental. They were going to be playing a little catch up with, reaching out and earning the trust again. There's a part where we're talking about adults,
Right.
People want to make their own decisions and have a certain amount of freedom and trust that they can follow certain rules, so that they can interact with other people.
So what are they doing on this coming wave? Because we're back in that place. We've got a lot of mandatory shutdowns.
I think a lot of the things that we've done is they've had those again with appointments in the fitness room and things like that, but also we've got technology in place, kind of what Bruce has got. We've got now, they have genius bars where they'd say, okay, on the activity listing, okay, come on down, bring your mobile. So now I think those things are in place. And as we lock down again and have a little bit more of, that isolation, we have a little bit better of a connection, of people understanding the tools that they have available to them, and that they can, call and reach out to the family and vice versa. And, if they need somebody to turn the lights on for them, we didn't know Bruce was a Motel 6, so I will leave the light on for you.
The technology is a game changer for the environment that we're in right now. The one thing with some of these communities that are old, that are still trying to get their Wi-Fi to be faster, to have the larger bandwidth, there's still challenges out there regarding that. So while we've got technology, I mean, even in our own homes, the bandwidth is challenged because everybody's working remote.
Very true.
A lot of people are still working remote. A lot of kids are still doing virtual learning. So the entire infrastructure of the internet is stressed.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Inside the communities, when they're older, it's even more challenging to make sure that there's enough bandwidth to support all the video chatting and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, certainly we all have felt that, and we all appreciate the technology. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to, put on a webinar like this, and we wouldn't be able to talk to our colleagues and our peers. So I think that some of us were challenged in the beginning as well. So when you take and add the fact that maybe somebody's out of the newness of technologies and being up on it, I'm not surprised that seniors aren't ready and, able to facilitate it. But, you brought up something that was very interesting, and that was the closing up of rooms and taking furniture out. And, when you have that situation, when you have these existing spaces that you don't want to be used as they typically were, how can they be repurposed, Bruce?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to be creative and looking at all the square footage within a space, and outdoor spaces especially, and just creating the ability to utilize, when some of the furniture is pulled outside, can be pulled outside,
Mm-hmm.
but creating barriers, creating the visual barriers so we can still have family meetings, and just reprogramming the outdoor spaces, whether they're utilizing outdoor cubes for family gatherings, family dinners, just one-on-ones, but it's so important to, bring the outside, in, or actually the inside out, I should say. And there's a variety of different ways to do that. And it's really brought people to think in terms of how to use their space and really how to keep families connected.
And that looks great in a warm weather climate, and certainly in the summer months into the early autumn in other parts of the country. But what will we be doing to give families the opportunity to connect, not in person, but almost in person with barriers in place when it comes to the darkness of winter and the cold of winter?
Yeah, we're working with a couple of communities in Oklahoma right now with some outdoor cubes, what's fully enclosed, they're tent-like structures that are a clear vinyl all the way around, looking very much like tent, but they can be heated. You can have light. They need to be on a level surface. They can be secured. They can be put up against the existing fences or building. But it is a way to bring heat in, bring light in, and control the the wind and the outdoor elements a little bit more.
And then do they get cleaned after each family gathering? How does that work?
Yeah, they can be wiped down, and they are being wiped down and sprayed. And what they're doing, they're available in a variety of different sizes. So it's really the most common way are really 4 people settings where maybe there might be two chairs and a couch, or a couch and a few chairs. So, and then they're wiped down afterwards. So it's up to the communities and their creativity, quite honestly, but the families love it.
Well, we see that even in the restaurants. Well, until we were shut down, we certainly were seeing these kind of igloo shaped or dome shaped plastic areas so that people could be both warm and individual families could gather and have meals, or friends. And the big question in everybody's mind is, oh, that's great. And if it is actually warm enough, that would be wonderful. But how do you really keep them clean? So I think that that's going to be something that has to be communicated to folks, and that it is safe and there is a protocol in place for cleaning it in between families and guests and whatnot. We need to make sure that we also have the activities kind of rescheduled and repurposed as we're still in this phase of COVID and, things are limited. And I know, Dale, you had some ideas about activities that seniors could engage in where they would be stemming isolation and engaging with one another. Can you share some of those new ideas?
Happy to. We're based in Florida, and so in Florida, the rules are different here, and the weather is different also. And so based upon Florida, some things have loosened up a bit, and people are actually able to spend time doing activities together so long as they're social distancing. So a question came up recently of one of the communities that we're designing, and that had to do with the card room. And cards are a very popular activity at most senior living communities, but the card room at this particular one was far too small to be able to accommodate all the card players. And so we searched around to try to find other spaces that could be used. And what we had to consider was that we needed sufficient lighting, because we looked at the library. They have several libraries. We looked at the library and the lighting wasn't sufficient to be able to see your cards. But during the day, if there's an abundance of natural light, that makes a huge difference. And we were able to plan for card rooms in those types of spaces. So it also has to do with how people are reacting to each other. Some places and some communities are allowing people to play cards or to socialize, but at a distance. And it really has helped to improve people's outlooks, but also there are times when you need that extra jolt that's really fun for the residents because they are really bored. And so one of the ideas we came up with is a traveling tea party. And so a cart goes around, you knock on someone's door at tea time, and you offer them tea and a sweet treat or two. And it's been a very, very big hit. Also, Zoom birthday parties, where you gather the relatives together from all over the country, all over the earth, and celebrate a birthday. But at a community level, you come to someone's door with a small cake, and at the same time, it's being videoed. And so everybody on closed circuit at the community can share the excitement and look forward to their own birthdays. And that's been really wonderful. And then there are companion devices that are out there that people really love, having that companion dog or cat or even companion birds. And they're not real, but they look real and they behave in some ways that people really appreciate. And so that's another way that people can feel good about their environment and what they might be able to do within that environment. The other thing is themed dinner. So although dinner is being delivered, there's no reason why you can't have an Italian night or a Japanese night or whatever at a particular community. And then people have that to look forward to. And the other thing that we've discovered is that there are a number of colleges and universities around the country who are eager to be pen pals to residents at senior living communities or individuals living at home. And it's a wonderful way that you can keep in touch with each other. The other item that's come up a lot is the book club. Because
I'm going to stop you for a second. I just want anybody who's listening who's interested in the Pen Pal program,
yes.
We do have some Pen Pal options that are listed on the Ageless Living Collaborative website. And so if you want to participate in one of those and become a pen pal with somebody who is in senior living and not necessarily able to get out in the community because of COVID, that's a wonderful thing to engage in. You had more, I know, Dale, but I just saw a question from one of our participants today. And she asked, what has been the senior's response to seeing a family member through a glass partition outdoors? Wouldn't just the proper distance be as effective with a face cover? Anybody like to take that question? You're muted, Faith.
It finally happened to me. I think it has to do with the comfort level of the seniors. I mean, there's a part too where even being outside. I mean, we've set a culture where we've said, we want to keep you safe and we want to keep you. So even in being outside, having a barrier might just give a little bit more peace of mind, where we know that they're together, they can see them, and even if someone's wearing a mask. So I think everybody has a different level, and I think Dale and it's one of the things she was talking about the other day was, really that everybody's going to have a different level about how they, how would they interact with that tea cart. You might just kind of say, put it on their purse shelf outside their place, to then ring the bell, and knock on their door and and move on down and wave at them, after you're down the hall. So everybody's got a different comfort level. So I think that that's why we're constantly adapting solutions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And Phoebe, it's also, in some cases, it's not really a choice. This is a regulated business. And so particularly in the assisted living and memory care. And so in many cases, the state's saying you can have visitation and here's how you can do it, or you can't have it. And so it's not always a choice that the operators are making. In other cases, it depends on what phase they're in. Many operators have a phased, we call it reopening, but really they've been open the whole time because they're caring for people.
Right.
But depending on what the situation is in the building, they can move through different levels and phases. So if they're For example, in a building that hasn't had any cases, the state is open. They may allow in-person visits in a very controlled environment with a very specific set of guidelines. But the minute that that situation changes, the best operators know how to adapt quickly, and maybe they shift back to outdoor visits only or window visits. And so, I think there isn't one answer fits all. I think for a family member, obviously, the more you can get close to a loved one without putting them at risk is certainly preferable. But, all of us are out there in the world a lot more than our seniors are. And so there certainly is some risk there.
Mhm. That makes sense. Is there a protocol that's pretty across the board with regard to testing in communities at this point?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so
I
either.
just wondered, that was something that came into my head. I think about colleges and, how they're communicating with parents and students about testing. And I thought, that might be an interesting question for seniors, be it independent, assisted, or memory care. Yeah.
So some states were requiring it. New York was requiring it for
Mhm.
some period of time for all associates when things were really bad there, and they were doing it on, I think it was a weekly or biweekly basis, which was put a tremendous stress on the properties. There are some operators who are using rapid testing. I think there's still some question about the accuracy of it, and so I think that's we have varying degrees of folks who are doing that. I think as that technology improves and is more readily available, I think more people will use it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Speaking of technologies, what are some additional ways to soften isolation? Bruce, do you want to share some of the things with us?
Yeah, we're working with a group Centrics, and really they utilize what all the residents have is the TV, and doing it, really bundling services, bundling the TV, internet, phone, but utilizing the TV as the tool in their room, and giving them the access, giving residents access to healthcare, having the music and entertainment and DVR solutions, and it's so critical. Family access that kind of like I talked about with the Amazon, the Echo Show, you could do the same thing with this technology, only utilizing larger screen, the TV. The community information board is on this platform too, and also live activities, church access, doctor's appointments. It has the camera and microphone integrated with it, and it's basically just a nice way to bundle everything and making it less scary for the residents.
Challenging. Mhm.
Yeah, there's also, we talked about it the other day, but there's technology concierge services that are available. So you can get concierge services 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever the community likes and needs. And, along with the family members are critical too, to help out and get engaged with having and using this technology.
But it is great to have a tech service to be able to come inside, because when family members aren't able to come in and personally help their family member who lives in the community, it's great to have a service, whether it's that Genius Bar scenario that Faith was talking about, or having a concierge, which makes a great deal of sense. You don't want to continuously put technology guru job description onto the caregiver. They certainly have enough going on, but to be able to have somebody who residents can, tap, whether it's a couple of days a week or once a week, it's really quite helpful, I'm sure. We're on the brink of the holidays. They're rapidly approaching, and we're interested in sharing and kind of discussing what new approaches, what's going to be the thing that's going to make the holidays a happier place despite not being able to be at an extended table with family members for Thanksgiving or beyond into December. Can you guys share some new
Yeah.
twists on the holidays?
I have there's a creative take. Every year, our firm does Santa for seniors. And so we get a list of all the things that, various seniors would like. And we've gone shopping and package it and put it together. And, and then it goes to like a Home Instead organizes this for a lot of for people who are their clients. And we were worried that wasn't going to be happening this year. And they were creative enough to get it, like they're going to have the list and we can actually go through Amazon and do the shopping and have it go directly to the person so that they can have it. You can have a gift wrap. So now it's not touching my hands and then the organizer's hands and then the transportation person's hands. And then, so they found a really great way that we could still do that, still have a, personal message with the things that would just, brighten their holiday, with a couple of those items that would bring a smile across their face, still have that connection. So I was really happy to see that they found a way to make it happen. So.
Mm-hmm. Laura?
I don't, Zoom, everybody is getting very used to Zoom. So for those that have a personal account, on Thanksgiving, and I'm guessing they're going to do this for Christmas, but right now they've announced for Thanksgiving, when you have a personal account, it goes for 40 minutes and then it'll stop and cut you off. It is not going to do that on Thanksgiving Day. So you can Zoom as long as you want and with as many people as you want.
That's great.
At no charge. It's all free.
That's going to be super helpful to people. Anybody else have any new thoughts for holidays this year?
It's not a new thought, but I think some of our operators are trying to make things feel as normal as possible. So still decorating, still having that sort of festive spirit where you can. Not all of our communities are shut down. Florida is a good example of that. And so there are still visitations happening. There's still residents in the common areas. And so trying to make it feel as normal as possible for those residents is as important as doing something new and creative.
And speaking of Florida, I have a little bit of a personal story to tell. I told all of you about my Aunt Midge, who's 109 years old and living in independent living, in senior living. And her caregiver contacted me yesterday and she said, I haven't been home with my family for Christmas for 7 years. Wow. Is there a way that you can help with this? Because I'd love to be able to do that. Well, I would be thrilled to be with Aunt Midge during the holidays, especially at Christmas time. So we immediately made arrangements for us to go up and be with her and spend the time. And when I told her, she was just overjoyed. And the caregiver had taken the time to go to management of the company and ask if it were possible for someone to replace her. And he said, yes, 2 people, they can't be spending a whole lot of time in the public spaces, but if they're going to be in the apartment, then that's perfectly fine. And so we really know we have a very happy time to spend Christmas with Aunt Midge, who's 109, and God bless her.
That's amazing. And is there any type of requirement for you to do that? Are they requiring testing for you prior to you going to the community?
Absolutely. Every property that I know of or we're working at gives you a questionnaire, takes your temperature, and some of them are requiring COVID testing. We know that we are healthy now, but we will test before we go up there just to be absolutely sure that we're not bringing anything that would endanger her health.
That makes perfect sense. What can children of seniors do? And what can grandchildren of seniors do to help them combat isolation?
So when again, from the community's point of view, asking them sort of what do you want everybody to know? I've got Ageless Living Collaborative here. We've got a wide audience. What should everybody know so that we can all partner against isolation and loneliness? And I think one of the greatest things is there is sort of a protocol that some communities are putting together. And we know to reach out and to talk and to connect. But I think that, sometimes you run out of things to talk about, but we're giving some pointers about how to talk about things, giving some really positive bullet points. And I got to steal some of these. So you want to, staying positive, there's this idea that we want our seniors to live their best lives. But right now, why don't we just focus on living the best day and finding out what they are interested in, that they might have loved to do in the past, that they could start doing, as a hobby, especially in isolation, or what maybe a new pursuit would they have, and getting them in contact with the resources to make that happen. Especially with a holiday or Christmas, then, a gift might then sort of present itself as, she always wanted to try painting, or, she loves jigsaw puzzles, or, or whatever that thing is. And talking to them about it. But it's really talking and listening is so important. We might not think there's a whole lot going on in their day, but to explore, to listen and validate and normalize the emotions, that's really important to do when you're speaking with a loved one in a community, or actually with each other. I mean, this is all sort of good advice with all of us right now. I'd say, we also want to transcend any self-limiting perspectives that we have, or those limitations that we have, and identify those and understand we are all in the same storm, but we're in different boats. So we want to be, we don't necessarily have to pounce a solution on somebody, but we can understand and be empathetic and realize it is different. And I think all of us being, probably looking at some lockdown measures can understand that different boat metaphor very easily. And I think that there's other ways that helping them connect with their community, their tribe. And I think, the bridge that, Bruce said with technology, and even just within their, with friends too. I think that that's really important if those connections aren't being made, or they're not finding that bridge where they are. And just really helping, others to embrace a more beneficial perspective and be activated to support their own well-being. There's a part where you want to also be take charge. And I love to tell my team there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we don't know the length of any of those, but I think it's very hopeful that we can, say, okay, we had the news about the vaccine is great. It's light at the, there's some really great things. And so that to me can hold us out, longer, and to remember about, what we can do for ourselves for this, for this actually relatively, I think,
Right.
short time, given what we've already had to go through.
But isolation isn't isolated to COVID. Isolation exists despite any other, viruses. That is a common and challenging element in senior communities. And yes, the virus has added a very significant layer to that. But we always, I think, are trying to combat isolation
Absolutely.
in some
Absolutely.
way
Yeah.
in the communities.
Could I add something to that, Phoebe, before you move on?
Absolutely.
I keep thinking that it's all about purpose for people. And, I have a 90-year-old father, and I'm very interested in keeping him engaged mentally and otherwise. And so I give him jobs to do. I was taking a writing class, And it was very painful, but I had my father reviewing and critiquing my work, and it was painful, but it became very important to him and
Right.
gave him something to do to help me. And I think when we can create those opportunities
Mhm.
for grandkids who need reading help via Zoom or anything like that, where somebody has a schedule to their day where they feel like at the end of the day they've achieved something, that's a win.
I agree. I agree
That-
completely. You know,
100%.
my mother used to contribute to the newsletter at the community, and she took it very seriously. She had to have her story in by a deadline, and that gave her that purpose, right? And I think that that is something that we have to make sure that they all feel that they have purpose in their lives. That will keep them uplifted and engaged.
And I think COVID, you're right, Phoebe, COVID just put a spotlight on this, but this is something we've always had. So hopefully us talking about it and giving those tools and I'm so glad Rachel brought up purpose, because the more that we can source those meanings of purpose and bring that out in people, it just, it does so much good for the soul.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Maybe if it, to go onto Rachel's and Faith's, so when you don't have any family left and you're in a community,
Mhm,
to do those Christmas gifts
mhm.
anonymously to so-and-so, you know, anybody that's listening, to hop on those pen pals, that's a purpose. That
Right.
provides those folks that don't have any family left,
Mhm.
was an only child or whatever the case might be, where they don't have any connections anymore, is huge. I mean, it's critical.
Right. No,
Good point, Laura.
I
Good
agree.
point.
I
Yeah.
agree. And phone banks. Phone banks are another
Yeah.
thing. You know, there are some organizations that will reach out to seniors and do phone banks, you know, and make calls and engage them, you know, just in daily life and try to be newsy and cheerful. What are some other ways that we can adapt programming in senior living or across senior living in the future, Rachel?
I like that you used the word adapt. You know, I think the reality is, and I say this all the time, I think when this first happened, I had this great concern that we were going to change everything about what we do as senior living providers. And the reality is we are a social model and you have to socialize for that to work. And so, you know, none of us really cared much for single seating dinner and activities that are, you know, bingo. And we all sort of started to rally against that some time ago, and we're moving more in the direction of providing choice and flexibility and programming and spaces. And I think that has to continue. So we have to expand what we were already doing. So, and I use this example because I saw it happen in a community that had 200 IL residents, but a relatively small dining room. Social distancing is a problem. Fortunately, we had just built them a wonderful bar. And so they started to use their bar as a stopping point before the dining room, and they were programming differently. And so people, it became a great experience to have a drink before dinner while you were waiting to go in for dinner. And so thinking about things like that, or do we serve dinner in the bar as opposed to just doing it in the dining room? Do we build other dining venues? Everybody's been doing that anyway, and I think it's smart. Outdoor dining has always been something that I think we don't pay enough attention to in senior living. I very rarely have seen it done well, to be quite honest. I think that's going to start to change, as well as programming spaces um, in outdoor areas. And when we think about that, it sort of was the last place, and I know Laura will agree with this, when you're up against a budget, you're getting that inside done and you're buying 5 million dining chairs and all those things that you need. And then it's like, well, what's left to do the outside space? Oh, well, we'll worry about that next year. And that next year never comes. And so now I think when we think about outdoor spaces, we need to think about them not only as social spaces, but people need to get out and walk. And
Mhm.
so how can we create activity spaces that are, I call them, the close in for residents with limited mobility? How can they get some exercise? And then sort of middle out, do we create a walking path and make sure that we maintain it for those residents who need to burn off some of that energy? Do we have more spaces for grandchildren? Things like that. I think we have to revisit that and pay pretty serious attention to what we do with our outdoor spaces.
Well,
So
now more
certainly,
than ever, that's become relevant
yeah,
because taking people outside and giving them the opportunity to do something outside is a healthier option, right?
yeah, and
So,
it's a silver lining, Phoebe. I mean, this is like, what can we take from this that
mhm,
will propel us forward? And that
Yeah.
certainly is one of those things. There are others. I mean, I think we've talked a little bit about making sure that seniors can be trained on technology consistently, and a concierge within the community. To me, that is a no-brainer. I mean,
mhm.
anybody who's ever given their parent an iPhone and or any phone for that
Oh,
matter,
yeah.
as I have, I mean, it's a process of getting somebody used to that. And if it's easy for them to do it and they have a resource, then they'll be successful with it. And if not, it's just another expense and another piece of equipment that nobody benefits from. And so I think there should be a commitment to that. It's good anyway. And it opens that door for our seniors to be connected to the greater community, even when there is no pandemic.
Right, right. And perhaps we might be able to do things like add lecture series
Yep.
to the in-community channel so that everybody can have access to it, but by bringing somebody in from the outside to share learning on a topic or do something about literature, contemporary literature, maybe that's, another option. I
Yep,
think,
I have one operator that I know that's going to do some national programming. And, imagine if you could do some type of, I mean, obviously you're not going to do like French cooking, but if you have an independent living and people are doing it in their apartments along watching like a cooking demo, and everybody knows and they have the ingredients and it creates an activity, those kinds of programming that are interactive but don't require you to be physically there in person
right,
should certainly be explored. And I'm a huge fan of education via the internet. I've done it myself. It can be tremendously rewarding when it's set up correctly and can expose people to groups of other people that they would never have access to. And so young people and older people learning together, those are all great initiatives that I think we have to consider.
Yeah.
absolutely.
And one of the things that came up in conversation with Bruce that I really liked when his family was, actually Zooming during meal, actually eating together. And I thought that was great. I think all of us, I mean, you've seen everybody with a glass of wine and oh, it's cocktail hour and we'll do Zoom, but we're rarely sitting down and actually doing a meal. And I thought, well, that's really powerful. I mean, I couldn't believe that's kind of the next step. And I thought Bruce was absolutely brilliant. I'm like, how come I didn't think of this? I'm Sicilian. We eat, that's what we do. And how do we just all get on Zoom? And, if it's that cooking class or whatever that is, that you're all breaking bread together, maybe not from the
Okay.
same loaf, but that is because that is that daily check-in when you have those conversations. How was your day? How did, all those things that it just happens naturally. And so I encourage people to, hey, let's do dinner. Yeah, we'll do it virtually, so that was
I
For
think
us,
that's getting more and more traction.
it's getting back to the basics.
yeah.
We all grew up eating together at the dinner table, and we're coming back together around the dinner table. And then that's the activity that we look forward to and sharing, hey, what are you cooking tonight? What are you cooking tonight? So it's something that's look forward to in the,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah.
I agree. I
I
agree.
hear there's a few extra loaves of sourdough, tossed around in the season. A lot of sourdough baking going on.
Yes, that was the pandemic baking, right?
Yeah, that was the
We have a very diverse group who signed up to participate in the webinar today. And they come from hospitality, senior living. There are architects and designers. There are multi-family communities that are on the call. We even have some consumer folks, and this would be a great time if anybody has specific questions for our team to go ahead and go in the Q&A to ask those questions, and we will try to field the answers. I have a question right now. Are programs with colleges and universities being developed for those seniors that are interested in continued learning? Some really are. So can anybody speak to that and how we might offer that to seniors in communities at the moment?
I can speak to it. I know that there are some properties being developed with relationships with colleges and universities where free programming is offered to seniors. A lot of that was intended to be more in person. I think when this was initiated, it was intended to be more of a social interaction. I think that's shifting too, and there will likely be more of that. The better operators will be doing it because it expands their programming.
Right.
And, coupled with programming internally that's more diverse, and rather than passive programming, I know some people really like bingo and cards, but when you can get online and see a travel log with somebody who visited all the very exotic places in the world, and then participate in something like that as part of a class program, whether it's operator put on or university, or it's a partnership with a local group. I mean, these are other things. It doesn't have to just be
Right.
colleges and universities. It's really a community platform where we can bring diverse programming to our residents.
Absolutely. I think there would be a lot of takers on that. Another question we have, what has been the seniors' response to seeing a family? Oh, we have that one. We already did that one. I'm sorry, folks. Well, I think that the other piece of it is, music to communities, and we really haven't spent a lot of time talking about that, but the idea of bringing music in isn't just relegated to a showroom or a place where they had typically gone for, the concert. And it can be a movable feat through the communities, and that will engage people as well. So there are a lot of different ways to bring the arts and to do engagement and use the in-room TV service, or the TV that's in everybody's home or apartment, and be able to deliver content to that, or to them through that vessel. I think that's something to be explored, certainly as we go into these longer nights. And unfortunately, more lockdowns are what's happening around the country. So, Faith, you asked, what can we do for all our seniors and really for all of us going forward in isolation? I thought that was a great question.
I wanted it open to everybody, because I think it's that outreach. I think that one of the things you could do, take a page out of the community's books, that when this all happened and everybody went down and lockdown, and they literally started with A and started calling everybody, how many of us have gone through our personal Rolodexes and reached out to just think of everybody in your life, not just your regular holiday connections that you're seeing. But it's interesting, I think, that even friends that you've had for years, I find, are connecting again. And so I think that that's one of those things that so that helps. Again, ageless living, all of us could use a call, or a text or something. And how are you really doing?
Right.
And what are you doing to make the most out of this? Because I think that that's the more we share ideas and we tap into each other's passions, that's gonna give us able to give us a ride. We're gonna be able to ride through this all together. So So that was just one thing, but if other people, I'll open it to the floor.
I think being able to connect, we have to figure out ways to connect, whether it's in different clubs, whether it's a book club or a chess club or a music club, and they're all going to collaborate via Zoom or whatever media they choose. You know, when we were in the office, I would call my mom and talk to her on the way in, and I would call her on the way home. And then that stopped because we were working from home, and she's like, oh, no, you are not stopping that. I need that. So she's very vocal. I eat. So yeah, she made it very clear that twice a day. So yeah, when we get done with all of this, I will be calling my mom. But
I think
the
that's
connection is critical. So, I mean, I think for those listening, anybody that can assist in reaching out to communities that are close to you to find out if there are residents in there that don't have anybody, in it, you know, is there something that they like that could be a connection that
Right.
could help out with? That I
Well, I know there are a lot of schools out there, lower school, middle school, that are encouraged to do community service. And this is a really great opportunity to make the seniors in your community the priority and to reach out to them. They love to hear from kids. They love to talk to kids. And so maybe at one level, it's the pen pal scenario, but at the next level, it could be, you know, a kid doing book reports and its history and talking to a senior about the history. So utilizing the opportunities within the communities to continue to connect in the community, I think is a really critical piece.
Mhm.
Well, I have enjoyed the panel today. I'm sure everybody listening has as well. Thank you so much for bringing your great ideas forward. And if anybody has questions moving forward with regard to isolation, or maybe they were hesitant to ask one of our panelists something and they wish to do so, they can do that by going to agelesslivingcollaborative.org, and we will answer you at some point. We check the website pretty frequently. There's a place for you to go on and pose a question. You can also look at the glossary of terms. We have a gallery of images, and all of the past webinars are housed on the website. I want to thank all the panelists today for spending the afternoon with us and preparing for this. And again, David Ashen for running the back end of the program. And we'll be back to you next month with a new webinar on communications that will focus on communicating to families within the community and with communities communicating to their external communities. So that ought to be really interesting. It's a really important piece, too often neglected. And we will jump into that next month. And so I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and safe Thanksgiving. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks so much for joining us today.
thank you.
Thank you.